Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the San Francisco Community Roundtable meeting for October 5th, 2022. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We are starting the meeting here at 7:04 p.m. and we are meeting via Zoom. Joining us today are staff to the Roundtable: Kathleen Wentworth, Roundtable Coordinator; Angela Montes, Roundtable Administrative Secretary; Jeanette Lujan, Executive Secretary, San Mateo County Planning Department; Jean Reindale, Aviation Technical Consultant from HMMH. We also have Lisa Wazasa, Deputy Director, Planning and Building Department in the San Mateo County. Also with us, Lauren Carroll, Deputy County Attorney for San Mateo County. We also have with us, representing Congresswoman Spear, Brian Perkins. From the FAA, I believe Fabiola Garcia, Acting Deputy Regional Administrator; Joe Bert, Team Manager, Western Service Center; Alana Jarris, Community Engagement Officer. And from SFO, we have with us Bert Ganoung, Airport Noise Office Manager; Paul Hanna, Consultant Chief Airspace and Flight Operation Engineer; Doug Gaycole, SFO Chief Information Officer. Kathleen, did I miss anyone in the attendance? You're on mute, Kathleen.
It sounded so good. In addition to what the folks you recognized from the FAA, we have Carlette Young, the Acting FAA Supervisory Senior Advisor, and from San Francisco SFO, Christian Valdez, San Francisco, the consultant on the GBAS program. That's all I see.
Thank you very much. If we notice anyone else, we recognize them as we do. Thank you. With that, I'm going to go ahead and start with land acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Hermitage Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land, and in accordance with their traditions, the Hermitage Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as a caretaker of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, I recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. I wish to pay my respect to acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Hermitage community, and by affirming their sovereign rights as first peoples of the land. Thank you very much for listening. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Montes to advise the public how they may participate during public comments.
Thank you, Chairman. For those using Zoom video conference, we will use the raise hand feature in order to organize any public comments. During the general public comment periods, I will ask those members of the public who wish to comment to click the raise hand feature to speak on that agenda item. For those joining by phone, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. When you hear your name called, I will prompt you to unmute your microphone and inform you that you may begin speaking. You will have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Montes. Moving on to roll call. Ms. Wentworth, would you please proceed with the roll call?
Yes, sir. City and County of San Francisco Board of Supervisors. City and County of San Francisco Mayor's Office. City and County of San Francisco Airport Commission.
Here, Doug Yeagle.
Thank you, Doug. San Mateo County Board of Supervisors.
Here, Dave Pine.
CCAC Airport Land Use Commission.
Carol Ford here.
Thank you. Town of Atherton. City of Belmont. City of Brisbane.
Terry O'Connell here.
City of Burlingame.
Ricardo Ortiz here.
Town of Colma.
John Goodwin here.
City of Daly City. City of East Palo Alto. City of Foster City.
Sam Hindi here.
City of Half Moon Bay, Town of Hillsborough,
Al Royce here.
City of Menlo Park.
Cecilia present. I'm sorry, Cecilia Taylor here.
Thank you, ma'am. City of Millbrae.
Ann Schneider here.
Thank you. City of Pacifica. City of Pacifica. Town of Portola Valley.
Jeff Alves here.
Thank you, sir. City of Redwood City. Redwood City. City of San Bruno.
Tom Hamilton here.
City of San Carlos. City of San Mateo. City of South San Francisco.
Mark Adiego here.
Thank you, Mark. Town of Woodside. Is Mr. Brown here from the town of Woodside? No response. Seven. I come up with 13. What'd you get, Angela?
I got 13.
You have a quorum, sir.
We have quorum. Thank you very much. Thank you for all who have made it happen. Moving on to the next item. It's public comments. I'll move on to public comments. This is a time for members of the public who would like to make public comments on items that are not on the agenda. If you would like to speak on an item that is on the agenda, please wait till that item is being discussed and we will give you the opportunity to share your comments. Ms. Montes, do we have anyone, member of the public, would like to speak on items not on the agenda?
Thank you, Chair. I do see one hand raised for this item from, I believe that is Ms. Landisman. Jennifer, please accept this request, unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Thank you. Good evening. Jennifer Landisman. I live in Palo Alto. And my question is about process, various process issues that I've been following up over the years. And one of them is recently there was a presentation on FAA's aircraft regulations and the codes that guide the FAA. And so this is probably not going to be on discussed, but outside of that is what I believe the roundtable does, which is to propose changes to with the airport and to the FAA. After the select committee, the FAA in a July 2021 meeting said that they need 100% consensus on any recommendations from the community. So I would like for you to please ask the FAA, and that was a new criteria because consensus was defined by the select committee at one point, but then the FAA came back and said, no, it has to be 100% consensus. So I would just like to put that on the table as a very important question because all of your work is not necessarily part of the things that the FAA does as a matter of course in addressing noise concerns. You know, it's not part 150, it's not NIITE, it's just out there. And so I would like to please urge you to have a clarification on what criteria you need in order to propose recommendations, and especially the ones that affect other areas that you do not have representatives from those jurisdictions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Landisman. And Chairman, we do not have any more virtual hands raised for items not on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Montes. Now moving on, I would like to consider setting the agenda and taking action on the consent agenda items. The staff will note any written comments and allow members of the public to speak. Ms. Montes, do we have any public comments on items 1, 2, and 3?
Thank you, Chairman. At this moment, I do not see any virtual hands raised for these items.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to ask a question to my colleagues. Any member wish to pull a consent item? Let me get to my participants. I don't see any hands up. Seeing no one wants to pull any item from the consent agenda, I would entertain a motion to set the agenda and approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second, Brisbane.
Thank you. We got a motion by Mr. Ortiz and a second by Ms. O'Connell. Can we get a roll call, please?
City and County of San Francisco Board of Supervisors. City and County of San Francisco Mayor's Office, City and County of San Francisco Airport Commission,
Yes.
San Mateo County Board of Supervisors,
Yes.
CCAC Airport Land Use Commission,
Yes.
Town of Atherton, City of Belmont, City of Brisbane,
Yes.
City of Burlingame,
Yes.
Town of Colma,
Yes.
City of Daly City, City of East Palo Alto, City of Foster City,
Yes.
City of Half Moon Bay, Town of Hillsborough,
yes,
City of Menlo Park. City of Menlo Park,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor, thank you. City of Millbrae,
Yes.
City of Pacifica, Town of Portola Valley,
Yes.
City of Redwood City, City of San Bruno,
Yes.
City of San Carlos, City of San Mateo, City of South San Francisco,
Yes.
and Town of Woodside. Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Wentworth. Moving on to the regular agenda, we have item number 4. And with us, Ms. Lauren Carroll, Deputy County Attorney for San Mateo County. And she will provide us an update on the proposed conflict of interest code for roundtable members and some roundtable staff. Ms. Carroll, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Chair Hindi. Hi, everyone. I am here to hopefully be talking to you for the last time about the conflict of interest code issue. You all might recall that a couple months ago, or maybe it was more than a couple months ago now, I was here speaking with you to pass a conflict of interest code, which you all did. As required, I shared that conflict of interest code with the Fair Political Practices Commission, which is the state agency that oversees all of these conflict of interest codes and makes sure that they are compliant and that all of you are also complying with the Political Reform Act. The FPPC had some revisions to the conflict of interest code that you all passed. And those revisions are primarily to the items that must be disclosed on your Form 700. So this is all detailed in the memo and in the new code that was circulated with the agenda packet. But just to go over it briefly, according to the new code that the FPPC approved, in your Form 700s, you'll have to disclose investments and business positions in business entities and sources of income if those business entities or sources of income provide facilities, products, equipment, vehicles, etc., of the type used by the San Francisco Airport Roundtable. So just, keep in mind that this is about any sort of business investments and business positions related to the services used by the roundtable, not by the airport. And as you know from passing the budget for the roundtable every year, there's not much that the roundtable actually contracts with or uses as services. So unless the roundtable's business and budget practices change significantly in the future, there's probably not much to disclose in that category. Also, you will have to disclose interests in real property that are located within San Francisco and San Mateo counties, which is probably similar to what many of you already have to disclose. And then also investments and business positions in business entities and sources of income, if those business entities or sources of income engage in land development, construction, or real property business in San Francisco or San Mateo counties. So I can't specifically advise you on what you will or will not have to disclose. So I advise that you go speak to your own legal counsel when you are getting into filing your Form 700s when this comes up. And if I know that at least a couple of you might not have agency counsel you can work with. So if you have questions, you can come to me and we'll see what I can do. And also in the memo that was distributed, I included some resources that could just provide some overall guidance on what has to be disclosed and not, because those categories that I listed are subject to certain exemptions. Things like your own personal residence are things that don't have to be disclosed. So that's the long and short of it. If the roundtable passes this new conflict of interest code today, The FPPC has kind of pre-approved it. So it'll just go through another notice period and then go into effect. We're expecting in December with initial Form 700s due in January. And you might recall from my last presentation to you all that if you already file a Form 700, it's highly likely that you'll be able to just include these disclosures in the Form 700 you already filed. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I don't want to make any promises I can't keep, but I hope it won't be too much more of a burden compared to what you all already do. Happy to answer any questions that I can.
Thank you, Ms. Carroll. I appreciate the detail in your memo and the resources that you had supplied to all of us. So much appreciate all your hard work on this item. Let me move on to go to the roundtable
Mr.
membership.
Mr.
Yes.
Chair, if I might, quick question. I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, but just I'm not sure I understand that first category when it says of the type utilized. I'm assuming that it's implicit that if you work for a company that's a consulting firm, for example, that they'd have to be providing consulting services to the airport or to the county. Not just because the airport uses consultants that you'd have to list it because you're with a consulting firm. Or am I wrong on that?
So it's actually the services that are the type that the roundtable would utilize. So that would be something like HMMH. So if you, I mean, I don't want to get into specifics, but say you work for HMMH or an HMMH competitor, that would be the kind of disclosure that they're looking for. Or the roundtable contracts with Millbrae Television, who's here today recording this. If you work for a competing local television chain or, broadcast facility, that might be another circumstance where you would have to consider disclosing. Did that answer your question?
It does. Of the type is implicit of the services rendered to the roundtable. So that limits it, I think, then. Okay,
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I misread that. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So with that, let me, this is where I was going. I'll go into membership if they have any questions or comments for Ms. Carroll. No worry.
Through the chair,
Yes.
I think this is going to sound like a really dumb one, but because Vice Chair Royce brought it up. So City of Millbrae also contracts with MCTV. Therefore, I vote on that contract with MCTV for other services. I'm very happy to add it to my Form 700, but I don't think it necessarily applies.
Well, you don't have a business interest.
No, I do not.
That's what
I
they're
do not,
concerned
but I
about.
represent the city that does
Well,
have
that
a
might,
business interest with them.
yes, I would double check with your
Okay, I will.
your city council, but off the, these very limited facts that you're giving me right now, this doesn't seem like the kind of conflict that they're concerned about. What the FPPC is concerned about is your own personal business interests, and they're worried that people are going to financially benefit individually from contracts that the roundtable is engaging in.
Understood. And I'm always happy to be multiply or much more transparent than one needs to be.
Great.
I'll run it past our attorney, but I don't think it's a problem. But you just brought up, I didn't think of MCTV as the relationship. So very good. Thank you.
No problem. And there are no dumb questions. This is very confusing, as you can tell by the fact that we're here a second time doing this again. So no problem at all.
Okay, thank you. And I think a good path forward is to always consult your city attorney if you have one on these details, as each city might have something a little bit different. Anybody else has any questions for Ms. Carroll or comments?
Mr. Chair, just a clarification,
Yes.
and I apologize. I was trying to find my hand to raise, but I didn't. So the question I have is, many of us are part of other organizations where we have to file a Form 700. I'm trying to just clarify, make sure this is no different than what we do for some of these other regional boards where we do the same thing, correct?
That is right. In my conversations with the FPPC, they indicated that if you are an elected official, as many of you are, you already file a Form 700 with the state, and it's possible to file a sort of expanded one, and you may already do this for other boards and commissions that you serve on. So it captures everything that you're disclosing, even though each individual agency might have slightly different things that need to be disclosed. So ideally, and again, consult with your own city attorneys, but ideally you should be able to file just once and it will capture everything.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, anyone else? Seeing no hands, I'm gonna go ahead and open public comments on item number 4. Ms. Montes, would you please advise the public how to participate?
Thank you, Chairman. And as a reminder, you may use the raise hand feature or press *9 if you are calling by phone to speak on item number 4. But Chairman, I do not see any virtual hands raised for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Since we don't have any, I'm gonna go ahead now and close the public comments on this item number 4 on the agenda. With that, I will entertain a motion that the roundtable adopt the conflict of interest code for the San Francisco Airport Community Roundtable as revised by the California Fair Political Practices Commission.
So moved, Hillsborough.
Second, Milbury.
Thank you. We got a motion by Vice Chair Royce and seconded by Member Schneider. Ms. Wentworth, roll call, please.
City and County of San Francisco Board of Supervisors. City and County of San Francisco Mayor's Office. City and County of San Francisco Airport Commission.
Yes.
San Mateo County Board of Supervisors.
Yes.
SeaCac Airport Land Use Commission.
Yes.
Town of Atherton. City of Belmont. City of Brisbane.
Yes.
City of Burlingame.
Yes.
Town of Colma.
Yes.
City of Daly City. City of East Palo Alto. City of Foster City.
Yes.
City of Half Moon Bay. Town of Hillsborough.
Yes.
City of Menlo Park.
Yes.
City of Millbrae.
Yes.
City of Pacifica. Town of Portola Valley.
Yes.
City of Redwood City. Town of San Bruno.
Yes.
City of San Carlos. City of San Mateo. City of South San Francisco.
Yes.
And Town of Woodside. Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Wentworth. Moving on, next item on our agenda is presentation. And just as a reminder and clarification, public comments on any of the items under presentation will be taken after the last presentation. Item number 5 is Chairman update. I will start with that. I have a few updates for you that I would like to share. Roundtable member John Carvel is moving from Woodside and has resigned his seat on the town council. Would be replacing him, Woodside Town Council member and Roundtable voting alternate Richard Brown. I don't believe Mr. Brown with us today, is he? I
No,
don't
sir.
see him, but anyway, welcome, Mr. Brown, when we come see you next time, hopefully. Next item is the Roundtable Portable Noise Monitoring Committee will be meeting later this month to consider any future locations for the 4 Roundtable directed portable noise monitors. So I encourage any member who is interested in this item that they would like have any input or has any comments to participate. And also all members, reminder, are welcome to any of the subcommittee meetings. Actually, they are encouraged to attend and participate. The same thing applies to members of the public. With regards to members of the public, we have some, in response to a request from members of the public, we have some Zoom enhancement because we have received that members of the public would like to see additional information on who are the attendees at the roundtable meetings. To that end, we will be adding a new feature. Several times during the meeting, roundtable staff will take a screen grab of the list of attendees at the meeting at that time. This list will be screen shared for a brief period and then removed from the screen. This screen shared attendee list will show each attendee with whatever name they choose to enter when signing into Zoom. Because as you know, Zoom webinar requires all attendees to sign in with whatever email address they choose to enter. The sign-in email address is not visible to other attendees. Important to note that the roundtable does not verify names or email addresses submitted to Zoom. The Zoom chat feature will not be enabled. This enhanced Zoom information will begin at the December 7, 2022 regular roundtable meeting. The last item that I have on my update is the Melbury Community Television will begin rebroadcasting regular roundtable meetings to the cities on their network. The rebroadcast will not be live or interactive, and there will not be any additional public input available on the rebroadcast. That is the conclusion of my report, and I would like to open it to the roundtable members if they have any questions or comments. I see Member Schneider has her hand up. Member Schneider.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little loopy tonight. I missed what you said about the mobile monitors and how to perhaps put the
Sure.
city of Millbrae into the list of mobile monitors.
Oh, I wasn't discussing how to put any. I was basically making an announcement. The Roundtable Noise Monitor Subcommittee will be meeting in this month. The date yet to be determined on time. Is that right, Kathleen?
Angela, can you confirm if we've decided, if you've gotten confirmation?
Yes, Chairman, the date is set for October 24th at noon.
Okay. So basically, Ms. Schneider, what I'm saying is any member or members of the public would like to come in and join that meeting, they could definitely speak on any of those items and advocate or share their thoughts and ideas with the subcommittee.
Excellent. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for the question. Okay. Looking at my list, I don't see any more hands up. With that, I'm going to move on to the next item, which is the airport director report update. And that is item number 6. And representing the director with us today is Doug Yackel, SFO Chief Information Officer, who will give us an update, followed by a report from SFO Aircraft Noise Office Manager Bert Ganoung. Following that, we have invited Paul Hanna, the GBAS team leader, who is here to listen to any suggestions or ideas the public on possible future GBAS 2A flight procedure. Mr. Yackel, please go ahead with your report.
Thank you, Chair Hindi. Appreciate the time. Just a few updates. I want to start with something you probably heard about last week, and that was a labor strike at SFO. 3-day strike involving airport food service workers. This is a union that represents about 1,000 workers at SFO restaurants. And essentially, it was a conflict between food workers and a coalition of restaurant owners operating at SFO. So although the airport itself wasn't a party to the conflict, certainly we felt the effects of it, and we're working very closely with both parties to encourage a resolution, which we did get towards the tail end of the week in the form of a tentative agreement between the two parties, which has since been ratified. This will be a new 3-year contract, really to bring the wages and health benefits up to par with other businesses and departments. This is a group that's been working without a contract since 2019. During the strike, about 1/3 of all the restaurants at SFO were able to remain open in some shape or form, although a lot of them with reduced hours and limited offerings. So we're grateful that resolution's been reached in that regard. In terms of passenger traffic updates, typically we see a tapering off in passenger activity after the summer travel season, and we usually see that tapering off happen in September, but we're really not seeing that this year. We're seeing demand remain as strong as it's been during the summertime, and probably the best example is that in the month of September, we're averaging more passengers than we were in the month of August. And we also saw our single highest day since the pandemic began over the Labor Day holiday. As a result, we finished the month of September at 85% of our pre-pandemic levels. So this is the closest we've gotten since the pandemic began to recovering that activity. So still very strong demand from passengers at the airport. Some airlines resuming service, some adding new service. United resuming their service to Auckland, New Zealand. That goes into effect at the end of this month on October 28th. They'll fly there 3 times a week in a Boeing 777. The aircraft will arrive from Auckland into SFO at 7 a.m. It departs SFO at 10:55 p.m. United is also launching a new service to Brisbane, Australia, also October 28th, also Boeing 777, also 3 times a week. That flight arrives at 6:40 in the morning and departs at 11:20 p.m. And then Air India is also resuming their nonstop service to Bangalore on December 2nd, 3 times a week, Boeing 777, 5 p.m. arrival and a 9 p.m. departure. Moving on, I had mentioned in the last meeting the Shoreline Protection Program. This is a future project to protect the airport's 8 miles of shoreline from sea level rise. This is going through the environmental permitting process right now. A draft EIR is now available for viewing, and I believe that was distributed to the Roundtable members. Again, this is a project that is not going to change airport capacity, doesn't change how many aircraft can fly at SFO. Really, it's about securing our critical infrastructure. The SF Planning Commission, since we're a city department, will be leading this process. They're hosting a public hearing on this tomorrow, Thursday at 1 p.m. to receive comments about the analysis they used in their EIR. The Planning Commission is also planning to host another public meeting next year prior to the certification of the final EIR. So we'll keep you posted on that. And lastly, Bert will talk about this a little bit more, but he's going to tell you a little bit more about a new FAA noise insulation program. This is something that the FAA is launching. It's going to replace noise insulation on homes that were built before 1993. We really want to recognize the FAA for launching this program. You know, when we launched our own airport funded replacement initiative, our hope was always that the FAA would engage in this process as well. And we're happy to see that happen. So Bert will have some additional details. And with that, I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Mr. Yackel. What a great ending, and hand off to Mr. Ganoung.
Well, thank you both. Go ahead and jump over to my slides here. And all right, hopefully we have the correct slide screen going today. Wanted to first jump into the noise insulation program update. Not going to read the numbers to you, but I will point out some differences from last time. Under the left column, the total applications received did increase by 9, so we have 949 now. The current units in construction reduced from 44 because 20 of them jumped down to the total units constructed, so we now have 39 there. And the satisfaction rate has jumped a point, so we're happy to see that. The Second Chance Initiative, the total applications received, we did receive another 20 there. And the current units in design dropped by 20 because those are out for the contractor bid now. So that increased to a total of 29. And the homeowner satisfaction rate stayed the same. The completion of the Second Chance Initiative with a total budget of $3 million and the scope installation of 20 to 25 eligible homes that have never been treated. And we have a note to see below, and it applies to both actually. Potentially eligible properties must be within the 65 dB CNEL contour. And they're subject to site inspections as well as acoustical tests to determine eligibility. Only properties that meet all FAA eligibility requirements may receive the acoustic treatment. And we're being pretty clear on this. We've received a lot of calls with people recognizing that SFO did receive the grants, and they're asking immediately, so I can get it, right? It's like, well, there are requirements. The reinstallation of the residential properties insulated before 1993, the new initiative that Lewis mentioned during our last meeting that the FAA arrived at, and it's for the fiscal year 2022. And SFO is one of the first airports. We enjoy being firsts, and so this is another in our feather in our cap there with receiving this type of a new grant, showing that we're on top of the ball. Total budget, we're estimating $12 million, and the replacement installation of 80 to 100 eligible homes that were previously insulated before 1993. And again, the note that I read earlier does apply here. Jumping over to the noise office items, we applied our thresholds that we went over last year and went through many iterations with the consultants in our office and brought those to the roundtable. They were vetted by HMMH, your consultant as well. And so we have applied them, and I received some rather interesting numbers. They jumped considerably. We knew they would, but it was interesting to see how close to the early ANEEM figures that we were looking at they are. Speaking of ANEEM, under a new noise reporting metrics, the ANEEM reporting is going to first appear in the third quarter portable noise monitoring reports. We're working on those now. We've been through a long vetting process on this, and wanted to make sure that each one was dialed in for each site. I think there will still be some fine tuning based on what we're seeing, but right now we're pretty darn close and we're good to go. Soon after that, we'll have the C-weighted noise reporting that people have asked for appear. And then I'm guessing mid 2023, we'll be able to incorporate the number above or N above. NA is another way of putting it. Since we're doing the evaluations on that. Very exciting time for us. We'll be the first airport definitely to be broadcasting all four different types, the noise power distance we're using right now, ANEEM, C-weighted, and N above by the time we arrive at these. I'm thinking that the director's report will get another page to be able to show all of these different noise metrics on a not quite so packed in page. I did receive a question if we were going to be doing a NEEM to noise report correlation work. It'll probably be a year out. We're not doing it right now. We're making sure that we're getting the noise to track flight tracks, and so the aircraft, and as well as the noise events, and making sure that's working right, as well as getting these other two metrics online. Jumping over to our GBAS, we're going to be soliciting ideas for Group 2A, 2B, and 3 procedures. I do have Paul Hanna waiting in the wings if we have any questions, but I'll go ahead and run through this. These are his slides from the technical working group. But we're looking for this in fairly short order. We're looking for within about a month. Any input that people have need to be submitted to sfo.gbas@flysfo.com. If you were looking at this presentation, you may have seen gbas@flysfo.com. That's not correct. It needs to be sfo.gbas@flysfo.com. But we're looking for fairly minimal input, very simple, very structured sketches, mapped paths, verbal descriptions, altitudes, if you know what you want in the way of relative or absolute. And then if you know of an example from another airport, for argument's sake, can you make a procedure that works like airport XXX and a procedure that's ZZZ? And I know I reversed that, but we're looking for that. We'll reply to the concepts via the noise.flysfo.com. And we're looking for some community concepts that we can convert to Group 2A, 2B, or even 3 community flight procedure packets. I know that we've been asked about this many times. This is your avenue, so please, if you would. In the meantime, we're going to continue to gain experience operating the GBAS, refine the GBAS noise monitoring report, and we're going to commit to our Group 2A procedure concepts. And we're asking that you commit as well with any submissions you're thinking of at sfo.gbas@flysfo.com. The question pages on our website will continue to be operated, and we'll put those up as we receive them.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Ganoung. Is that the conclusion of your report?
It is, sir.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here, and I'm basically gonna take it where you left off. I'm pleased that the roundtable is providing an opportunity for members of the public to directly share with the SFO GBAS team their ideas and concepts for possible future GBAS 2A flight procedure. We have been assured, as Bert has just told you, that your innovative suggestions do not require any formality or technical expertise, but rather just an idea or concept which can be reviewed by the SFO GBAS team. As a reminder to members of the public, we will adhere to a public comments for 2 minutes limit per person. And Bert already covered how you could submit additional suggestions to the SFO GBAS team, which is at their website, sfo.gbas@flysfo.com. This email will be posted, this email address will be posted in the Roundtable website along with meeting attachments. Ms. Montes, I'm going to turn it over to you to see if we have any members of the public who would like to comment on item 6B, the GBAS 2A concept, comments and suggestion from the public for GBAS 2A procedure.
Thank you, Chairman. And I do see 2 virtual hands raised. So as a reminder, if you are calling by phone, you may also press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. And I would also like to note that we did receive a written public comment for item 6B from Ms. Jennifer Landesman from Palo Alto, and that was circulated to the membership as well as posted to the website. So I will first call on Ms. Landesman, followed by Ms. Yapley.
Hi, good afternoon. I sent in an email about the type of interactions that SFO has been having with members of the public. And one of the problems is that SFO likes to solicit input and talk about issues that are really beyond the public's ability to do. And quite frankly, it's very scary that something informal and with no expertise is being proposed to affect airspace changes, and that the FAA is not involved. It's kind of like asking, you know, citizens to have Exxon, you know, run an oil spill cleanup. And the representation is just completely wrong. And this is exactly what policymakers pointed to during the select committee, a unanimous recommendation that was that basically called this process backwards, that you are asking members of the public with no expertise, as a matter of fact, encouraging this. I mean, I can tell you that a group of us, when we were asked to do this for the select committee, we wrote to members of Congress and said, we're not airspace engineers and we do not believe in this process. So I will send you a copy of that letter that was signed by grassroots groups from several cities in the Mid-Peninsula. So I think it's just all very confusing, and the FAA is leaving us. The FAA doesn't even consider public input. This is just like an unofficial random thing with an SFO project, and I don't think it's fair to the public, which is not even aware that you're doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Landesman. I will now call on Ms. Yapley.
SFO must engage directly with cities impacted by GBAS that are not represented on the roundtable in both developing GBAS IAs and robust noise monitoring. 2-minute public comments at meetings is not dialogue. Non-roundtable cities do not have elected officials participating or voting on recommendations. 2-minute public comments are ineffective. The roundtables discuss NIITE HUSSH at 20+ meetings, which don't include the TWG meetings since 2016, when it was originally proposed. Dialogue included FAA, roundtable consultant, and airport. Imagine if instead you had been limited to a 2-minute public comment with no dialogue. At the TWG meeting on September 20th, there was a 40-minute discussion alone. Number 2, SFO is not aligned with the GBAS Group 1A motion that was passed 8-6 on April 6th by the roundtable. The motion said that it would support the GBAS procedures presented at the meeting with robust monitoring to continue at Palo Alto, and that there would be criteria of both average and single events. SFO is now saying that their noise reduction goal for the approaches is to maintain an average noise level at each monitor that are lower than the GLS approaches. So SFO has dropped the single event requirement. See page 50 of the packet. SFO needs airlines to agree on the GLS approaches, given that the majority of GLS approaches will not be identified by SFO or the FAA. Again, the motion about robust monitoring and criteria that include both average and single noise events that all of you approved in the motion, these are not reflected in the SFO's current plans. I do want to thank, on a separate note, Bert and SFO for moving forward on a NEEM and looking forward to seeing noise monitoring reports based on a NEEM in Q3. And thank you for having the noise monitoring meeting in October.
Thank you, Ms. Yapley. I will now call on Mr. Scholl.
Thank you. Mark Scholl, Palo Alto. 2 quick things. I don't fully understand why it may not be possible to determine which flights are on the GLS procedures. RNP to GLS procedures have a really tight GPS signature. So in theory, it shouldn't be too hard to match GPS feeds to the ADS-B streams with these signatures. In other words, I just don't think there's a lot of work being put in to try to make the things happen that you promised. The second thing is, and it's really my main issue, is the decision to build the GLS procedures on top of Surfer's known over energy problems. These were created when Surfer 3 was implemented in 2018 and are due in part to the FAA trying to implement higher crossing altitudes over the Santa Cruz Mountains and eliminate path stretching vectors in the vicinity of the Woodside VOR. Surfer 3 accomplished these goals, but the design left planes high and fast at Eddy with no option but to deploy heavy flaps and speed brakes over Los Altos, Palo Alto, East Menlo Park, and East Palo Alto. This is a large amount of unnecessary noise. The BATA 4 models and the United test flights both confirmed these over energy problems. A recent test by staff at Stanford and NASA Ames suggests that just the early deployment of higher flap settings alone, not even speed brakes, has 5.7 decibels at SIDBI in Palo Alto. This is a fixable problem, and ignoring it unnecessarily hurts residents and the GBAS programs. I can understand why the FAA doesn't want to, but these problems should be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scholl. And Chairman, we do not have any more virtual hands raised for members of the public for item 6B. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Montes, and thank you for everyone who shared their thoughts with us. Moving on to the roundtable members, does anyone have any questions or comments about the items that we have just discussed at present? I see Member O'Connell has her hand up. Member O'Connell.
Thank you. It really is not, my question's not on the GBAS. It is on the Mr. Yekel's report of the new flights going to Australia. And while the flights coming in and going out are of the larger 777 planes, they're coming in at a very early hour and they are leaving in an extremely late hour. And I'm not sure if there is any way to convince the carriers to leave at a more reasonable hour than 11:30 at night, because I'm sure they want to get back to their home city at a reasonable hour. But I see that flight at 11:30 p.m. 3 days a week being very disruptive to the communities that are affected by takeoffs, and the early arrival of 7:30 passing over on their way in as being disruptive to the arrivals communities. So I just wanted to note my concern on that. And while the night hush is the new procedures that we've had going out to the gate, up the gate and out the gate, have been helpful on some of the heavier loaded planes taking off from certain runways, it brings more noise to our communities here in South San Francisco and Brisbane. So I just wanted to make those concerns known. And if Mr. Yeakel has any comments to that, I would be happy to hear them. Thank you.
Only to say, Terry, appreciate your comments, and I'll pass it along to our team that works with these airlines on the resumption of service. So thank you for those comments.
Thank you both. And just as a reminder, this is comments on item 6. So any of the presentation, whether it is director report or Bert or anything else that is listed for members, roundtable members. See, Ms. Schneider has her hand up.
Thank you, Chair. This is also to Mr. Yeakel. The San Francisco Planning Commission is hearing the draft EIR tomorrow. Last week, when I went and looked for it, I couldn't quite tell if it was going to be hybrid or only in person. Do you know?
You know, I was just looking at it before the meeting, and I did see a dial-in link or a login link. So it looks like it's hybrid, that you could do it virtually, and we'll make sure that we get you that information.
That would be excellent. As of last week, and I spoke with whoever the staffer was, they weren't quite sure, as all of us are slowly going back to whatever the new future will be. That's good to hear. My other questions then are on the noise metrics that Bert talked about. I'm glad to see a NIITE is coming forward. However, okay, bear with me. And I'm glad to see the insulation program and the re-insulation program go forward. But the problem then is the 65 decibel contour, which doesn't take into effect the flight noise from in back of airplanes. And what would be the process? And it might be, Kathleen, if you and I can talk about the next ground-based noise, that we add an agenda item that, as long as we are still using CNEL data and 65 contours, there will never be any mitigation for all but 3 homes in Millbrae, no homes in Burlingame, and none in Hillsborough on that. So we really do need to we need to come up with a plan that the FAA starts looking at the noise from in back of the jets and not just in flight. I went and did a quick scan of the 3 director noise reports, and looking at monitor 9, which is about 5 blocks from my house, it said that in June there were 2 noise exposure events. In July, there were 4. And in August, there were 7. And I can tell you that more than that happens in 1 hour at my house between the hours of midnight and 1 a.m. almost every day of the week. So clearly the monitors are not in the same place. Terry, if possible, it's your meeting for the noise monitors, that maybe we look at a discussion of monitors that can better reflect noise from in back of the jets and to the sides, which would pick up. I also scanned what was picking up in Burlingame and Hillsborough, and then comparing them to the noise in Pacifica or Daly City. And the noise monitors are picking up by far more problems in Pacifica and Daly City than they are in the close-in communities. And I got to tell you, people, even without getting into a C-weighted, A-weighted debate, that just doesn't make common sense on that. So if we can start moving ground-based noise and the monitoring move, and if we're going to wait a whole additional year for a NIITE, on one hand, good, but on the other, really disappointing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Anyone else has any questions? Just as a reminder, we have with us Mr. Paul Hanna, who is happy to answer questions regarding GBAS if any members have any questions. Okay. Seeing none. Moving on. Thank you both, Mr. Yekel and Mr.
Excuse me,
Ganoung, for your
Chairman.
presentation.
Chair,
Yes,
I believe Ms. Taylor had her hand raised.
I'm sorry, Ms. Taylor, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if there was anyone on staff that could follow up with Ms. Yapley's comments. I'm not able to repeat everything that she said, but just the idea of taking the average to calculate numbers as opposed to taking each event. So just wanted to see if someone could follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And I'll wait. Are you expecting an answer now, or you want to follow up at a later time?
Either works for me.
Okay.
Bert, I was just going to suggest, not to speak out of turn, that we could follow up on that one perhaps after the call.
Wonderful.
Oh, definitely.
Thank
Yes.
Yeah, we've got it recorded. We'll make sure to get an answer back here promptly. Thank you for reinforcing that question. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? I'm sorry, Ms. Taylor, I didn't see your hand because it's on the screen. I was looking for the virtual hands on next to the name. So my apologies. Okay. Anybody else? Seeing none. Thank you again, Mr. Yekel and Mr. Ganoung, for your presentation. And Mr. Yekel, I truly appreciate the SFO involvement and the labor negotiation, or at least putting the parties together. Probably you're not negotiating, but putting the parties together and come to a resolution that works for everybody. Appreciate that. And I know on the shoreline protection, Foster City has been way ahead also on our sea level rise protection by having our levy. So I understand the importance of that, and everybody else, I'm sure they're going to be working with shoreline, one shoreline to forfeit their shorelines, because this is something really going to be impacting the entire county. So I appreciate those updates. Okay, moving on to item number 7 on our agenda. As you know, the FAA implemented the night hush southbound nighttime noise abatement procedure on May 19th to operate between the hours of 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. At the July 8th technical working group meeting, the FAA had noted a number of flights which were, for reasons not fully determined at the time, not flying the night hush noise abatement procedure or other over water noise abatement departure. At the last technical working group meeting, Mr. Joe Bert, the FAA team manager and Western Service Center, provided a detailed briefing of the night hush. But since this issue has been an important one to the roundtable members for quite some time, I appreciate Mr. Bert coming here tonight to briefly update all of the roundtable members. Mr. Bert, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for having me tonight. Like the chairman said, we did go quite extensively. I don't plan on doing that tonight. I'm just going to kind of run through some slides and talk about some of the issues that we see and the things that we're working with SFO on. So let me share my screen. Let me know when you all see it.
You see it?
Okay. So here's the first slide I put together. This is the night hush and the 050 off San Francisco. This is what we're actually seeing with the night hush procedures from 1 to 5 a.m. Yellow line that you see is the actual night procedure. And then you see the God's waypoint out there over the water. Next slide. This is what the chairman kind of alluded to. This again is 1 to 5. We still had a bunch of aircraft on the stick departure. So we worked with San Francisco. San Francisco let us know they were seeing the same thing. We went back, we looked at it. We thought that initially we thought it was an automation issue. So we had our programmers go through it quite extensively. They found absolutely nothing wrong. So then we turned in and started looking at other issues. And what we found was that the tower controllers were not executing a couple of the steps that they needed to execute. So the district manager got with the facility manager. They put out some brief and some training. And since then, we've seen quite a dramatic reduction in it. For September, we saw a total of 2 for the first 15 days of September. that were on the stick compared to what you're seeing here. So we know it's not absolutely perfect. We're trying to get it to where everybody's where they need to be. And we'll continue to work with San Francisco. We've let them know that if they see something that looks abnormal, please reach out to us. We'll do an investigation. We'll reach back and give them information on what's going on. Also, we kind of briefly talked about Oakland as well. So I wanted to show that. Here's what Oakland, the HUSH off of Oakland looks like in the 120, or now known as the Sunny departure. Again, Miss Wentworth brought up a couple of situations where we had controllers turning aircraft out early. Those were addressed. And again, training was conducted with the Oakland folks and NCT on that side of the house. What we saw, kind of talked about, was the average altitude crossing over Pacifica. Let me go back to the other slide. Right in this Pacifica area, the highest was 18,310. The lowest was 12,747 feet. And the average was 15,403 feet. And right now we're showing 63 tracks that fly since May that have flown the NIITE HUSH or the 050 outbound from San Francisco. And that is about all I have. I know it was short and sweet, and I'm ready to answer any questions.
It is indeed short and sweet, but all full of information that is relevant. Thank you, Mr. Bert, for taking the time, and I appreciate the FAA's engagement and continually working to make this as best as possible to have compliance from all the airline flying that procedure. We appreciate you. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to the roundtable members. Do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Bert on this item? I see Member Ortiz has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And can I see that once the first slide you put up real quick?
Sure.
And just as a clarification, oh, was that it? No, because the one I was thinking is the one that shows that one right there. Yeah. So before the implementations, all those blue lines that are going to Gobs and coming back over Pacifica, those would have been where the magenta lines are.
That's correct.
Okay, so that is improvement. We still have a way to go, but that is a step in the right direction. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for that question and clarification. Anyone else has any questions on the NIITE HUSH presentation by Mr. Bert? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Bert, for being with us. And again, thank you for taking the time to prepare this presentation. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to item number 8, which is the subcommittee updates. First on that item is the technical working group, which I will report on. As we just heard from Mr. Bert, technical working group met on September 20th, 2022. And as we heard from Mr. Bert, the NIITE HUSH challenges and the improvements over time and the number of flights flying the NIITE HUSH or other over the water noise abatement procedure during the 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. time. Going forward, during that meeting, the technical working group had instructed the roundtable staff to work with Mr. Ganoung of the SFO Airport Noise Office and with the FAA to devise a format to identify flights which should be flying the NIITE HUSH or other over water noise abatement procedure, but do not do so. Such a report format should also determine the possible cause of these off-course flight paths and any recommended steps to prevent them. We will update this topic at the November technical working group meeting. The next item that the technical working group talked about and discussed was ANIM. We heard from Bert Ganoung, who updated us on the use of ANIM in capturing and recording noise events. He alluded a little bit to it today. He discussed the challenges of matching noise events to individual flights and the process of converting SFO non-Title 21 noise monitors to ANIM. And the last item that I would like to let you know about, which is you already have it actually on your packet, the technical working group agenda is on page 39 of your packet, and PowerPoint presentation on both the ANIM and GBAS are posted to the Roundtable website as part of the September 20th technical working group meeting page. Before going to round the table members, and if they have any questions, I would like to ask my colleagues who were at the technical working group if they would like to add anything to my report. I know member O'Connell was there, and if anybody else also was there, it doesn't have to be from the subcommittee, would like to add anything, please raise your hand and I will give you the floor. Okay, saying none, I'm gonna go ahead. I see, okay, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go to the roundtable members and I see member Schneider hand is up. Member Schneider.
So, thank you, Chair. Help me make sure that I understood this correctly from the working group. So a NEEM is going to be used in the non-Title 21 noise monitors. And the Title 21 monitors are those that are close in to the airport. And a NEEM is one of the ways that we can begin to capture the low frequency noise. But if we're not capturing them from the non-Title 20, or we're not using them in the Title 21, how are we ever going to begin to capture the low frequency noise?
Okay, so I think what I had reported on was the challenges that Bert shared with us on converting the non-Title 21 noise monitor to a NEEM. But I'm happy to see if Bert is available and willing to kind of address this question a little bit. If he is ready, if not, we have to get back with you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, I can answer.
Thank you.
So a NEEM is not used on the close-in noise monitors, no. We did do threshold adjustments on our monitors as well as time duration. And as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, the numbers actually are quite close to a NEEM now. So we're looking at very solid data coming out of our monitors. Sites 8, 9, 10, 11 in the areas you were asking about earlier, Councilmember Schneider. Very promising results. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
And when are we going to see that, Bert?
Should be having that in the director's report next month.
So for the September data.
Right. The problem is since a NEEM resides in a separate database, we don't have that in our ANOM system that we work with daily. So for us to do noise track correlations, things like that, we're relying on the system doing it behind the scenes after we did a lot of work dialing these sites in so that they would do it automatically. And we're pretty pleased with the results.
Okay. And when you use the term system track, does that mean tracking the noise from an airplane after it's 5 feet off the ground, or does it include in back of the jets?
It does take into account the noise behind the jets as well. As long as it has a flight track to correlate it to, it can attach it. Otherwise, it comes up as an aircraft noise event. And so we've been doing a lot of work to make sure that the system does match the two up.
Okay, so for example, a 30-minute run up wouldn't show. Because there'd be no flight track to attach it to.
Correct. And so we have a ground run up monitoring system for that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. Anyone else has any question on the technical working group report? Okay, saying none, thank you very much, everyone. Let's move on to the next subcommittee report, which is our legislative subcommittee led by Vice Chair Royce. Mr. Royce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is alluded to in your notes, the legislative subcommittee met on September 15th. Consists of 3 members, myself, Councilmember Schneider, and Councilmember Gio Giovanni from Daly City. We also are joined by a number of staff and by Brian Perkins of Congressman Spear's office, as well as some our outside consultants. The purpose of the meeting was really threefold. Number one, to get an update on anything that might be happening with respect to legislation in Washington. And secondarily, to sort of figure out what's going on with the FAA authorization and when we need to take action. And third, to figure out what the priorities and goals ought to be of the subcommittee for the upcoming year. So let me back up for just a minute on all three of those points. By the way, we had a presentation by Emily Tranter. Emily is the CEO of, excuse me, the CEO of NIITE, which is the National Organization to Ensure a Sound Controlled Environment. And she joined us with respect to her perspective on what was going on in Washington and some suggestions on what we might consider. The focus of our discussion with respect to cut to the chase, was there's not a lot of new legislation being proposed. With the elections coming up in November, almost everybody's waiting to see what happens to the House and who takes control of the House, who's on these various committees, and who the chairmans might be. So right now, this year is really sort of in a building phase. The real item for our advocacy going forward will be the FAA authorization bill, which will probably come up during later in the year after the election on January, after the swearing in of the new Congress on January 3rd, 2023. The FAA reauthorization bill was signed into law on October 5th, 2018, and was for 5 years. This is the first refunding and reauthorization of it, and it's a 5-year reauthorization. So the recommendations that are made now will be effective for the next 5 years, and there's really our only chance to impact that over the next 5 years. So it's pretty critical that we figure out what we want to lobby for, advocate for, and get our thoughts in. We're going to have a special legislative subcommittee meeting in early January of 2023. Once the elections are over, we know who the players are, and we'll be working with respect to what those recommendations are. We did have some initial discussions on the strategy we ought to take, and we'll be running this through the new congressman's office with respect to that. We're probably going to highlight, the initial thinking is to highlight 3 or 4 key issues that we want to focus on: NIITE HUSH, the noise metrics, et cetera. And then maybe some incremental changes that are smaller that are probably more likely to get success. We also are probably going to refocus on hopefully reintroduction of Congressman Spear's 8 bills. You may recall those, but those 8 bills were spot on with respect to what we've been advocating for. So we'd like to make sure they don't lose traction and they're kept in the forefront. So those are the items that we'd be lobbying for. The other discussion we had was with respect to what the priorities ought to be for this subcommittee. Our mission is basically to devise a roundtable on federal legislation affecting noise and maybe the environment. There's a little open there, and advising on advocacy. And this presents the best opportunity for both the federal legislation that we want to see happen and advocacy. So we want to take advantage of it. We also had a number of suggestions that we're going to pursue, one of which is to reach out and make sure that we're connected with our new delegations, whether it's the new congressman, the new state assembly member, including and Senator Becker, of course. We have 3 congressional representatives within the Northern California region that serve on the transportation and infrastructure bills. We've not contacted them in the past, and we think we probably need to. So we'll work with Brian and others, and with Kathleen to see if we can do that. We also had a very good discussion over an item that we've not really talked about in the past, and that's the impact on noise on schools. My understanding is there are state law governing that, but we did have some testimony in the past regarding the impacts. So we want to spend a little time understanding if there's something we need to do around that, if there is in fact an issue, and there may not be, but if there is, we want to make sure it's not lost and everything else that we're looking at. We also talked a bit about, if I get my notes here, about the health impacts, and we talked about this at the last meeting, the health impacts on noise and the recent studies that have come out, and whether or not we're adequately giving credence to those studies with respect to the advocacy efforts. There's a couple of reports that are included in your packet regarding some recent European studies on it. They're pretty interesting studies, and they highlight the issue around noise over and above just being an annoyance. And I think we're going to incorporate that in some of our advocacy efforts going forward. So with that, Chair, I'd be happy to turn over to the other members on the committee if they have any supplementary comments. I know Councilmember Schneider is on the call. I don't think Pam's on the call.
Thank you, Vice Chair Royce, for this very informative and important work that you all and your colleagues are doing on the subcommittee. I see Member O'Connell has her hand up.
Thank you so much, Chair. I was just wondering if we could try to follow up. The FAA has been supposedly commissioning a health study that we have been promised for years. And I know with the pandemic, it got delayed, but I was wondering if the Ledge Committee would be the right venue to try to follow up on when they expect that study to be completed.
Mr. Chair, that's a great question. We can certainly pursue it. That I would think to be within the confines of advocacy with respect to figuring out what they're doing on it and giving some input into it. So let make a note of that and we'll follow up, Terry. Great comment.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a great comment and great suggestion. Definitely, it's something that is important, and I have no problem seeing the Legislative Committee working on it and bringing it back to the roundtable. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Vice Chair Royce. And next, we're going to go on to the ground-based noise subcommittee chaired by Member Schneider.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Vice Chair Royce. I think you did an excellent job. Ground-based noise has not met since the last full roundtable. I did at the meeting say that given the next time ground-based noise meets, which is in November, which will be after the election, although maybe not after all the ballots being counted across the country, to have an idea of who may have control of the House, that it would make sense for all of us to talk about legislation in the remainder of calendar year 2022. So I've offered up a good portion of the ground-based noise meeting in November to talk about legislation or what we might want to do depending on who may take control of the House on that, or who may continue to have control on the House. So ground-based noise hasn't met, but I know a number of us are probably National League of Cities members, and they have a lobbyist, and I was just now trying to find her name in my notes. She held 3 meetings to members of the National League of Cities to talk about the FAA reauthorization and the things that the National League of Cities will be looking at. And somewhere in my handwritten notes, I have the main goals that NLC perceives. And a couple of them include, what do I have here? Supersonics, the new modalities, drones, air taxis, electric flights, and a couple of other things that really had to do with how an airport funds itself that I think would be of interest to SFO, but isn't necessarily of interest to cities. But then basically on the call that I was on, there were only 2 of us, a representative from Huntsville, Alabama. So it was a great opportunity to basically get into the weeds of low frequency noise and issues. For example, what Terry just brought up, if they're doing another health study, if they do it like the FAA annoyance study, they only looked at neighborhoods that were underneath flights, not to the side or the rear of runways. So it would be really good to make sure that we're getting all neighborhoods affected by all types of noise into those studies, and then some other noise metrics on that. So the end result is I thought it would be best if she also met with Kathleen, and Kathleen may want to chime in here. They have been trying to find a time where our staff can meet directly with National League of Cities lobbyists and start working on things or making sure that we get what we want in with National League of Cities. It was, the meeting I went had only 2. They had another meeting Monday. I had a conflict. Sadly, I don't think they were getting a lot of city elected officials attending their meetings, but maybe their roundtables aren't quite as active as ours is. And I don't know what the other 2 meetings NLC would have had came up with, or if it'll basically be NLC thinking this is what they should be working on, and then they need to hear from us formally that this is what we want them to be looking at. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you very much for your report, and I appreciate your suggestion or your offer to give a little bit more time of the next ground-based noise subcommittee to legislative discussion. Thank you.
Well, and I
Okay,
see Kathleen put her picture back on, but I'm hoping that we will get that meeting with other members of the roundtable. And I think she was hoping for it in October. Was I correct, Kathleen, or was she pushing it more into November?
If I may. Mr.
Sure,
Chair.
of course.
Yes, I'm scheduled to meet. Thank you, Ms. Schneider. You had a number of conversations back and forth with the NLC representative, and we did connect via emails, and I'm meeting, her name is Brittany Kohler. She's the Legislative Director for Transportation and Infrastructure Services and Federal Advocacy. And she and I are meeting next Tuesday. And as I understand, the purpose of our meeting is for me to listen to what she has to say and understand what the platform is of the NLC, and then I can get some data from her and some other information and report back to the chair and the ledge chair and you as well, and see if it's appropriate. If I think she's talked with you, Ms. Schneider, about possibly coming to a roundtable meeting to share her platform, and that could be something that could happen at the during the year, towards the end of the year, perhaps. But we'll have an initial I'll have an initial meeting with her next week, and we'll see where she wants to go from there and where it's appropriate for us to go.
Great.
Thank you. And Vice Chair Royce, we had talked about trying to develop more partners as we try to push legislation. And then these NLC meetings came up, and it just seems like another opportunity to get somebody else at least understanding our issues, if not advocating for them.
Yes, if I could comment, Mr. Chair, I think Ann raises a great point. One of the objectives of the legislative committee going forward is to be more collaborative with some potential partners, whether it's the National League of Cities or some other roundtables, to the extent they have similar concerns that we do. And I do know there's a couple of citizen groups, I think Darlene Yapley has shared with me, that are advocating for certain issues as well, that we need to coordinate efforts. I think we need to be somewhat focused on what we advocate for in terms of increasing the activity. If we get too defocused and advocate for 20 different things, that may be a losing strategy. So we need to understand what is high prioritizations for everybody and see if we can't coordinate our efforts around that. But that's sort of the thought process. And by the way, if any members of the roundtable, because we'll be coming back to the roundtable with ultimate recommendations, have items that they think ought to be highlighted, I think there are probably 3 or 4 that I've heard over the last few meetings. Make sure that we're aware of them. Make sure we don't overlook those.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Okay, moving on to members, roundtable members, comments and questions. I see Member O'Connell.
Thanks again. I just wanted to make a comment, and usually Brisbane is affected by takeoff noise and overflight noise, and it comes into our parabolic bowl and reverberates. But last night, and due to the wind conditions, we heard what I would call the power up or the ramp up just before takeoff of many flights right in the 11:30 to 1:30 in the morning time zone. And it might have been just because of the wind conditions, or that the rest of our world was more still than usual. But I do want to say that we really did hear that ramp up noise that Millbrae, Hillsborough, and Burlingame hear a lot of the time. And it was a very different sound for us than we're used to hearing. It was the high whining, and it reminded me of when we sat on a plane, when you sit on a plane just before they take off and they still have their brakes on and they're, pulling back on the throttles or whatever they do to get up off the ground. And it was a very different noise than what we're used to hearing. And I did want to commiserate with the other cities involved that those noises are equally as disturbing as those loud engines coming right overhead. So I just wanted to make that comment. I don't know what was different about the conditions last night, but they were certainly there.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing your experience with different noise. Not that we wish you to have it, but as you experience it, thank you for reporting that with us. Okay, anybody else? Let me see. I don't see any more hands. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, subcommittee chairs and members of the subcommittee. Appreciate all your hard work on the subcommittee and definitely the detailed reporting out. Very helpful to all of us. Thank you again.
Good night. Thank you.
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Ortiz.
No, I was just saying good night and thank you. Nothing.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Moving on. Next, we have we're going to be open this to public comments on items 5 through 8. Ms. Montes, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. And I do see one virtual hand raised, so I will get my timer ready and I will call on Ms. Landesman.
Hi, thank you. This sort of applies to all of the other items, but about the National League of Cities. My observation of the NLC is that they usually have lobbyists that are that penetrate these meetings in order to tell a lot of city officials, supersonic is coming, urban mobility is coming, oh, it's coming, but there's never any details. And if, not that anybody's asking, but if I would focus on anything, it would be on the 65 DNL, the fact that the federal agency responsible for quantifying aircraft noise does not, care about anybody outside the 65 DNL. And so the 65 DNL is a really big problem. You could basically say that there is, deception going on, and these cities are not aware. They just think that, oh, technology and the FAA knows what it's doing, but they have not demonstrated that as regards noise, or they do, but they're not doing anything about it. The other thing I would focus on is nighttime noise, which has been brought up today, and that's great that you're all working on it. But Chair Hindi, you said something at the beginning at one point in one meeting, how you said, the ambient noise, the differential, it really makes a difference at night. And that also applies to cities that are outside of the 65 DNL. And the third thing that I would focus on trying to address with cities and alert them is concentrated flight tracks of whatever, air traffic movement. But I just think that the real big problem is the fact that the FAA is not stepping up. Now, the noise policy review, we have heard nothing about that. Very important to communities who gave 4,000 comments into the Federal Register about the NES, no follow-up yet. And that kind of stuff should also be, that should be shared with cities around the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Landesman. And Chairman Hindi, we do not have any virtual hands raised for presentation items. Thank you.
Thank you. Then seeing no more members of the public who would like to speak, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comments for items 5 through 8. And that takes us to item number 9, members' communications and announcement. Anybody, members, have any comments or announcements would like to share with the roundtable? I'm seeing none, unless I'm missing anything. Let me scroll up. There we go. Okay, seeing none, that will take us to the number 10, which is the item for adjournment. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone, especially staff, all the members for their attendance, SFO, the FAA, and everybody from the members of the public, especially those who shared their concerns and their comments with us. Please keep them coming. We appreciate each and every one of you being here with us. With that, I'm gonna adjourn this meeting and wish you a good night and see you at our next meeting, which is in December. Is that correct, Kathleen?
December, yes, sir. Oops.
Wonderful. Yes. Thank you very much and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.